A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
really
right.
I was so
And I just thought, well,
I figured it out
It was that golden moment.
because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Story Clutter, where true personal stories about science help us to discover how weird and wonderful it is to exist in this world and be a human. I'm your host, Misha Gajewski, and today's stories are all about vaginas. I'm so excited for today's episode because one, I get to say the word vagina into a microphone a lot, and two, these stories are so weird and interesting and wonderful. Our first storyteller, Milly McDermott, is a cartoonist and comedian. Her story was shared at one of our favorite New York spots, Caveat, and this story is all about learning to embrace yourself and all the weirdness that comes with it. I love this story and Milly, so I just know you're going to too. Here's Milly.
So it's 2007 and I'm 15. So up until this point, I had been very socially awkward. My parents didn't allow me to listen to music or watch really like trending movies or anything like that. So it was really hard for me to connect with people my own age. But I was finally 15 and things were going to change for me. I mean, I could have friends that were older than me at this point. We were driving cars, finally be able to listen to music. And also, I had figured out one of the secrets to attracting male attention in rural Missouri, which is long hair and hydrogen peroxide. I would use the hydrogen peroxide to dye my hair because it was cheap, and it really didn't matter that it was more banana yellow than it was platinum blonde. Like, I was still becoming more socially accepted. But I started to have a period that was 5 weeks long. It was really heavy, and I was doing things that was not so socially acceptable, like bleeding through my pants onto my friends' car seats and having to go to the bathroom at 10-minute intervals because I had this urgency, like I needed to go pee, but I couldn't. And it was only a little bit later that I realized that there was something that was pressing up against my bladder. And what I realized is that if I moved it, I could relieve some of the pressure so that I could go. Now, this should have raised red flags and I should have gone to the doctor. But at this point, my family members, me and my 4 brothers, we didn't really go to the doctor unless it was like a broken bone. And I knew so little about female anatomy at that point that I just figured, you know, maybe this happens to everyone and maybe it'll work itself out. So at this point, though, it starts getting worse and worse. I start becoming anemic and vomiting, and I throw up, and the pressure from it pushes this thing outside of my vagina. So this thing, it looks like an organ. It is red with veins, and it has this consistency of like a wet eraser. And the thing is that I don't want to tell anyone because at this point, I think I'm growing a penis, which was very taboo at the time. And I mean, also, if this is a penis, like, let me take advantage of this. Like, what's it like to get paid 10 more cents on the dollar? So I'm pulling on it, and I'm not feeling pain, just sort of a pulling sensation in maybe my stomach. And I pull so hard that I eventually break a piece off. And I'm like, okay, this is definitely not a penis. Because that would have ended me. I mean, psychologically, like, who am I without a dick, you know? How am I gonna be heard at family functions? So I finally cave and I tell my mom, and I'm like, Mom, look what I found today. And she looks at it, has no idea. And we go to a gynecologist. And the gynecologist doesn't do a vaginal exam. She just hears my symptoms and says, well, maybe it'll be better after a week. Maybe you can get your mind off of it and go on vacation. And so I went on what can only be described as the worst camping trip of my entire life. Okay, so I am unzipping and rezipping the tent throughout the night, trying to go to the porta potty. And nothing is coming out. And I switch over to the van because I don't want to wake anybody up. and the van has no ventilation. And so I open it up, and immediately mosquitoes coming into the car, buzzing in my ear, and I am sticky, and I am bleeding, and I am hot, and I don't know what's happening, and the mosquitoes are making me feel like I am a dead thing. I feel like roadkill. So we go to the ER the next day, and it turns out I have a tumor the size of a grapefruit growing from my uterus down through my cervix and out my vagina. A tumor called intrauterine embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. Which, like, side note, I feel like it's a really cool name, and this cancer doesn't get enough representation. Like, I feel like it all goes to breast cancer, and that's fine. But it's like I saw this one guy who had a 3-dimensional boob on the back of his phone case one time, and I looked at him and he goes, "Oh, breast cancer awareness." And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be on board with that. Like, I feel like I'm only gonna be on board with that when somebody has a vaginal tumor on the back of their phone. And they go, "Whoa, intrauterine embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma awareness." That'll be the only time. So I'm in the hospital bed, and they gave me an epidural, so I'm paralyzed from the waist down. And their goal was to use chemo to shrink the tumor so that they could eventually operate. So I'm lying there with my legs apart and this mass hanging out of me. And I don't know if you guys have ever, you could probably imagine, tumors don't smell that great. So I had this can of Febreze that I would spray on my lower body every 20 minutes. I will never like the scent of fresh linen ever again. Also, side note, okay, somebody recently, they have Febreze trash bags now, and I'm on the fence about that, but they have like there was one of my friends who was using fresh linen trash bags, and I didn't know that. My scent association just went straight to, okay, somebody is hiding something dark in their genitals. And then once I found out what it was, I was like, oh no, that was just me. That was just me. So anyways, I thought I was gonna die. But you know what? I kind of came to terms with it. You know, I was so bad at school. My school really focused mostly on math, science, and history. Those weren't really the things that I was great at. I was more so theater and art related. And so whenever I found out my diagnosis, I was like, you know what? I'm going to concentrate on the things that matter. Scrapbooking and watching daytime television. And so, but I'm so sick at this point, I don't want to do any of it. Walking anywhere, like all of it just made me super motion sick. All I wanted to do was sleep. But my director of humanities at the hospital, Jill Turek, did not want to see that happen. And one day she asked me, hey, will you be the keynote speaker at this Friends of Kids with Cancer fashion event? And so I get to be at the Ritz-Carlton. Okay, this is the fanciest building I've ever been in my entire life at this point. And there's chandeliers, a giant ballroom, floral carpet, 200 guests, $100 plates. I mean, like, I don't even know if the walls were gold, but in my memory, it was gold. And they go on stage and they introduce me. And they say, this is Milly. She's 16 and she's very brave. And I go on stage and I tell them everything that I have told you up until this point. And they laugh, and they connect, and they cry. And I had this moment while I was on stage where I was like, this is what I want to do. I get done, and I mean, the compliments were wild. They're like, Milly, you're so beautiful. You're so talented. I mean, these are the compliments I had died to hear beforehand. I mean, here I was trying to fit in at school, trying my best, and all I needed to do was die a little bit. I would have had no idea. So I got to do multiple cancer speaking events after that. I'm falling in love with public speaking. And a year and a half goes by, and I finally have my last chemo treatment. It's a shot of vincristine, and I go home, and I ask my mom if I could take the car out. And while I'm driving at night, I just start bawling. And I think, who am I without cancer? And is anybody gonna wanna listen to me on stage now that I'm not dying? But with the shedding of identity comes a birth of something else. I've now been 15 years cancer-free. And I still have so much I want to talk about. I make comic books and I do stand-up comedy, and people are still listening and laughing. And I have so much love around me. I reflect on that time and why people really gravitated towards me during that time more than any time prior. And I realize it's because I didn't have the energy or the time to be anything I wasn't. It was through the ability to just be unmasked, essentially. And so I reflect on it, and I know that it doesn't take bleach blonde hair or a vaginal tumor for people to see your light. All you gotta be is yourself. Thank you.
That was Milly. To learn more about her, visit our website, storyclutter.org. Being a storyteller on stage is just one way to make story clutter happen, but if standing alone in the spotlight in front of an audience doesn't speak to you, maybe becoming a story clutter donor might be more your speed. Story clutter donors play a vital role in our ability to bring you this podcast. We're in this together. Story clutter is one big experiment that's designed to connect us around our love of discovery, curiosity, and the natural world. If you believe in the power these stories have and this mission, please donate to the Story Clutter at storyclutter.org/donate. The most popular level is $10 a month, and you can make your tax-deductible donation at storyclutter.org/donate. But really, any level makes a difference, and we're so grateful to everyone who supports Story Clutter. If you're a woman over 40 dealing with things like hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, anxiety, or weight gain, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. The experts at MIDI Health understand what you're experiencing and know how to help. MIDI Health was created for women, by women, and is all about bringing compassionate, high-quality medical care to women in perimenopause and menopause. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. Visits and prescriptions are covered by major insurance providers, and there are no membership fees or hidden costs. MIDI Health is also super easy to use. Once you sign up, you just schedule a virtual visit to discuss your symptoms and health background in depth. You can sign up from anywhere on your phone, laptop, or tablet, and you don't have to wait forever to get an appointment. When I signed up, they had appointments available for the very next day. You deserve to feel great, so book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. Our next story is from Dawn Harris. Her story is recorded at one of our local New York spots, QED Astoria. And I can't wait for you to hear the story because it's so wild. I don't want to ruin the medical mystery surprise, so all I'm going to say is 2 vaginas. Trust me, you're going to love this story. Here's Dawn.
There are some things in life that once you hear them, you can't unhear them. For me, that was when a guy I was dating told me, "I think you have 2 vaginas." I had my doubts that he really knew what was going on down there for a number of reasons. But it freaked me out enough that I decided to do a little self-exploration to see if he was right. When I felt something unexpected, I decided I was going to ask some major questions at my next pap smear. If you ever want to see a gynecologist's jaw hit the floor, ask them if you have 2 vaginas. She picked her jaw up, did the exam, and now you might be surprised to hear this. But she said I did not have 2 vaginas. So, but if it wasn't 2 vaginas, what was it? Because, I mean, it really felt like there were 2 pathways down there, like 2 roads diverged in a pinkish wood. And I always had to use 2 tampons one to the right and one to the left. So throughout the years, I would ask other gynecologists, and they would all say no. No other partners I ever had ever found anything different. And it was just so embarrassing to keep asking about it that I stopped. But I kept wondering. Fast forward to 2015. I start dating the man that is now my husband, Brian. Yeah. When we started talking about marriage, I knew I had to tell him I wasn't totally sure about having kids. I thought that there was something physically wrong with me. I had really crazy irregular cycles, and I didn't know if I wanted to have kids. It's like it wasn't a core need of mine. And so I told him about that, and he was like, "Well, it scares me too." So we got engaged. Wasn't a deal breaker. And so we got engaged in October 2019. So our October 2020 wedding would have to be postponed. Throughout the pandemic, through suddenly having to move to a new apartment because our landlord sold the building, through 4 wedding postponements, through me losing my job, and through losing our wedding venue 1 month before the wedding, I just thought to myself, if the world comes crashing down, the only place I want to be in the entire world is by Brian's side. And I felt that, I'm terrified of doing this on my own, but I have Brian, who I believe would be an amazing father. So I asked him, should we maybe just try this so we never regret not trying? And he said, okay. But we didn't want to do it right after our vows. I mean, it was really stressful getting this wedding off the ground. And we just wanted to enjoy being married for a little while. I was 38 on our wedding day, though, almost 39. And then, whoops, one day I turned 40. And, I'm like, maybe we should start trying. Fertility drops off after the age 35. So the clock had been ticking. And our decision-making process over figuring out if we wanted to become parents consisted of just like, I have no clue what we want to do. This is so scary. What if we get divorced? What if we have no money? What if the kid has like a terrible disease? And then our couples therapist was like, well, it sounds like you have the idea of what parenthood is like. And I think to myself, we're driving ourselves nuts. Like it might not even be possible anyway, so let's get some fertility testing just to be sure. I made an appointment at the NYU Fertility Center, and in my first appointment, they're doing a transvaginal ultrasound. The doctor takes a look at my ovaries, says they look nice and healthy. I've got plenty of eggs. And then he takes a look at my uterus and stops cold. He says, okay, this is your uterus. And you see this line down the middle? That's a uterine septum. Did you know about this? And my eyes bulged out of my head. And I go, oh my God, do I have 2 vaginas? And he's like, so this is your uterus. And I'm like, no. Okay, I know it sounds stupid, but you don't understand. I've always thought that there's something wrong down there. It's like 2 roads, and I always have to use 2 tampons, one to the right, one to the left. I really think I might have 2 vaginas. Can you please check? And he's like, okay. So he, feels around down there for like a minute, and then he tells me, no. I don't have 2 vaginas. What I had is called a complete septate uterus with a longitudinal vaginal septum. Allow me to get a little pedantic. What that is a congenital anomaly. When anybody with a female reproductive system is developing, those organs start as 2 tubes called Mullerian ducts. And they should grow and expand. And when they begin touching, their shared wall of tissue should dissolve and become one unit. It's like 2 bubbles hitting and becoming one big bubble. That just never happened for me. And there's no known reason why. I personally believe it's because I have such extreme ADHD that I never finished the very first project I ever started. And here's the bad news. There are lots of other types of congenital anomalies, and mine is the one with the highest rate of pregnancy failure. So if we want any shot at having a kid, I'm going to have surgery. And I just, from my gut, I just said, yes, sign me up. And they scheduled me for a few months down the road. And I left that appointment feeling so amazed and frustrated because I can't tell you how many gynecologists, if I had 2 vaginas, and they all said no. So like, how did they never catch it? Apparently, what happens is in a routine exam, if they put in the speculum, it just moves the septum over to the side. So they would see what looked like a normal vagina and, you know, just tell their friends about me later. And so we have the surgery. It goes very well. And I have to heal for 2 months. I can't have sex or use tampons or go swimming. And, you know, it was really non-invasive. I was very surprised. It was super easy. And so our next step will be doing an IVF procedure because I'm, you know, 40-ish. And that's going to be our best bet, even though it still is only about a 20% chance. So count me extraordinarily shocked when 3 months after the surgery, 4 home pregnancy tests and 1 blood test confirmed that I was pregnant. I called my doctor and I'm like, dude, and he's like, whoa. And I did not think that was going to happen. And I was like, no shit. I had the grimmest predictions possible. And he told me, you know, congrats. Your hormone levels, though, they look a little low. So come back in 48 hours and we'll take another blood test. And I was amazed. I was like, did I just save myself $30,000 in IVF? And for Brian and I, it was like we were shocked and amazed, but like we weren't terrified. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect this little life growing inside me. And I did my very best for 2 whole days. Unfortunately, the second blood test confirmed that the pregnancy was over. And we were back to square one. It just happens sometimes. And nobody always knows why. Before the surgery, Brian and I had planned a late season trip to Montauk. I had been picturing walking down the street, or the beach, hand in hand, picking out baby names. Instead, it was cold and gray. Hurricane Lee was passing off in the Atlantic, heading towards Maine, and it caused a huge swell. The waves were so much more powerful than I'd ever seen them before, and we couldn't swim. And one morning, I'm on the balcony, and I'm watching these surfers. They were out there taking the opportunity, and there's this one guy who's just trying and failing and trying and failing over and over again and again to catch a wave. And at long last, he caught one. He jumped up and he put out his arms and he took a nice long ride. And from where I was standing, I knew that must have been the most amazing feeling in the entire world. Thank you.
That was Dawn. If you'd like to learn more about her, visit our website, storyclatter.org. Our website is just one way to connect with Storyclatter, but there are so many other ways, and we hope you'll use them all. You can always follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Head to storyclutter.org to become a financial supporter, or if you want to come to one of our shows, start your own Story Clutter show in your community, or even learn how to tell your own science story, you can learn all about that on our website too. This podcast is produced by me, Misha Gajewski, along with Jen Chen, and Erin Barker, Executive Director and co-founder of The Story Clatter. The stories featured in today's episode were produced by Paula Croxon, Christine Gentry, Tracy Segarra, and Grant Bowen. Special thanks goes out to the Story Clatter's board and staff, including Anne-Marie Lonsdale, Leslie Burnson, and Lindsay Cooper. Our theme music is by Ghost, and next week I'll be back with stories about saying goodbye. They're such amazing stories, so don't miss it. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.